The only people that didn't get fined were people who had like flamethrowers, who then melted the snow and let it freeze on somebody else's driveway and made things worse. But they didn't get fined.
Tricks of the trade, I guess. So, yeah, tonight I just wanted to try running a literary role-playing game society meetup.
Yeah.
Just to see how it works, and just see what people are interested in. In terms of maybe taking this to Hangouts. We used to run a local game, and a local hangout here at a pub. And we did that for quite a while, but that kind of broke down a few years ago, so I kind of switched over to the online version. And
okay.
Yeah, so now I decided, hey, we have Google Hangouts here. It's very low stress. Wow, you have a huge amount of background noise coming in.
Yeah, my kids decided that since the computer's on, it's time to start yelling and being as loud as possible.
Right, yeah, of course. Goes without saying. So, actually, I think I can actually do something about that. Hey, Cavin, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. I'm one of Jonathan Henry's friends. I do Giant Dragons Gamer Chat with him a lot. So I hadn't met you before, and I've read some of your blogs, enjoyed them. So
okay, that's
here I am.
Cool. All right. Well,
apparently, he also does video game streaming, because I just
yes,
something on his stream like this last week.
Yes, I just started streaming again. I got upgraded internet out here in Eastern Oregon, so I can actually stream at a reasonable resolution. So I've been doing some stuff with video games too, and social networking in kind of video game circles as well as RPGs.
Well, that's
I saw one of the channels you were hosting was doing Mega Man 4. They were trying to do a speed run.
Yeah. And
they were dying on all the spots in the game that I always die and get angry about, and it was really satisfying to see that I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Yeah, the streaming community is cool. I've also, I do some professional storytelling. I got a few clients that I actually run Dungeons & Dragons games for that I get paid to do it. So
wow.
It's
that's extremely awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where there's a big conversation about that. And there was just there's a podcast that John linked me to that was, I'm trying to remember which one it was, but because there's so many RPG podcasts out there, but they just had to sit down with, how do you make money in this industry? And I went to business school and stuff, so I'm really interested in kind of the business side of creative endeavors too. So,
well,
that's my life story.
Yeah, that's great. I started a Professional Gamesmaster Society on Google+, and you are like our ideal member because you're already doing it. Ours is like a brainstorming process, and we're like, how do we do this? How do we do this? Would you be up for joining us and telling us how you got started? Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
if you give me a link, I would be more than happy to join. I think John actually told me about it. I just hadn't gotten around to it.
Sure. I'm going to send you a link in the chat right now.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's great. Yeah. So when you run your games, can you just tell us a little bit about how they're set up, like, age group and, like, is it ongoing story, system, stuff like that?
So I have a couple of different ways that I do it right now, and right now I have one client that's doing it each way. One game is a totally private game. They basically just invite everybody. That game is basically guys that are in their mid-30s, and, well, one of the players is a little bit older than that, but they're all friends from kind of like the convention scene in Dungeons & Dragons, and so I run 5th edition games for them. I also run a more kind of like hybrid type. I have a patron that pays about half of what I do, and then I have we have open signups for that game, and some of the people donate. So I don't make it I make a little bit less on that one, but it's done in a different way. And it's really, this whole thing is really about, it's like it's almost like a project instead of just being like, hey, I'm a DM and here's my rate. It's more like, well, I have people that want to play this kind of game this way. This is what they're thinking about when it comes to rates, and do they want it to be open? And so, yeah, you really have to be strong in your negotiation and be able to show that you can do what they want to and be consistent. And so you're always there, you're always prepared. I've done it for 7 months, I think, and I've had to cancel one session, and I was doing 3 or 4 sessions a week for a while. So, yeah.
So
I'm probably saying too much for each question because I'm sure you had a lot of questions about it. So
yeah, well, let me
back.
just kind of roll through this, because this is an incredibly great topic. Is from my point of view, and I kind of run 2 groups. One is the Literary Role-Playing Game Society, and that's what this is tonight. I also run the Professional Gamesmaster Society, but I kind of see them as related to each other. They're sort of mutually supportive, because if you're going to be a games master, you want techniques. If you're professional, you really want techniques that give people a real sense of, wow, this is more than just a hack and slash dungeon crawl. You want to really kind of bring it out. This is interactive storytelling with rules and so on. So I kind of see them related. So I want to kind of discuss this, like the literary role-playing game aspect would be, how do you run your stories? How do you shape them? How do you make sure that people are staying engaged and involved? And how do you draw them into your world? Those kind of questions. But I'm also super interested in just kind of the technical aspects of, how did you get set up? How did you market this concept? What kind of feedback did you get? Is it a is it a livable wage? I guess that's the first question that most members are going to ask is, hey, wait, can I live on this? Because if I can live on this, I'm there.
And I would tell anybody that has those questions, well, I don't know, it's any of these small business creative things, you can't tell anybody that they can guaranteed be able to live. I mean, I'm in a very good situation when it comes to finances. I live on a property that's paid for. I don't have a car payment. I don't have kids. I'm in great health, so I don't have medical things going on. So it's been livable for me, but what I've seen is that it's not 100% consistent. So what you have to do is you have to be in a situation where even this small amount of money that you're making, you have to take most of it and you have to put it into equity kind of things. Like you have to put it into the hands of friends and family, or do investing or something like that outside of this, for you to be able to make that, like, hey, I could live wherever I want and do this kind of wage. Right now, I'm making more than somebody that maybe works full time in like a, what do you call it, like a minimum wage job.
Right.
I have been. Now it shifts. I mean, it's the summer. I have some my clients are requesting less games because they're going to be out doing stuff.
Right.
So I see this as a seasonal thing as well. And I'm sorry again, I'm answering a lot of stuff at once.
It's okay, because I just blasted you with about 5 questions at the same time. So let me take this kind of one at a time. So my first question is, after is a livable wage, and let me just talk about that for a second. I think that you're absolutely in an ideal situation if you have low rent and no payment, little overhead, especially if there's some money set aside and you're saved or whatever, so you've got some buffer, then, hey, guess what? This might be a really good thing for you if you're really creative and into this concept. You might be able to make it work for you, but of course, obviously, there's no guarantee. It kind of totally depends on you and how well you can manage to set it up and convince people that this is something they want and so on, and how professional you are at conducting the games. So that's understood. I think what a lot of people just want to know is anybody able to do this? Because my thinking is if somebody can do it, I can do it. So seeing you is a big boon, because you're that, you know, that case illustration of, okay, somebody's doing it, we can do this. It can work. It's not that it will necessarily work.
Right.
So,
and what I'm working on right now is with a concept. I'm working with John. He's got a concept that he wants to do kind of like some I guess it would be RPG journalism, you know, like get something together on that end. And I have this idea of putting together the mechanical part of a website where people would be able to put their services up. And basically, when you create a marketplace for something, that's where things start to happen.
Right.
I mean, it's not to say that everybody's going to love the amount of money that they're going to make doing it.
Sure.
But if it's more than zero, than what they've been getting, then it's a good thing. It's kind of like with the whole Uber thing and that kind of stuff. I mean, when you have something that a lot of people can come into as providers, the cost of things like that is going to come down. I mean, that's just how it is. And it's going to come down to where it's close to subsistence. I mean, you're going to be close to minimum wage. You're not. This cannot be the thing that's going to make you rich.
Right.
You know. But if this is the I don't know, like if you're doing this as part of what you do, and then maybe you get some ideas together for a creative project that takes off, or you get, you're able to, like I am, be able to take money from this and put it into, other businesses, then it's totally viable. But it's a slow burn. This is not a get-rich-quick kind of thing. And I think anybody that's got anything to do with RPGs knows that this is nothing close to get rich, maybe at all, or get rich quick. Yeah. And I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, first off, I just want to welcome John. Hi, John. How are you? Let me. All right, are you there, John?
Maybe he's half here.
Well, I think I accidentally muted him when I clicked on his icon.
Okay.
But I think I tried to unmute him. So anyway, John, if you can hear us, say hello, and we're glad to have you. And Rob just joined us. Let me unmute Rob here if I can do that. I think I should be able to. Well, he's still on mute. Sometimes Google Plus will auto-mute people when they first come in, or if it's too noisy in the background and stuff like that. Anyway, we see you, Rob. We see you there. You're welcome. And let me just make sure I'm pronouncing your name right. It's Cavin?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, good. So Cavin has been telling us about his professional games mastering gig, and I've been plying him with questions about how he's got it set up. And I'm streaming this, so I'm going to put this up on my YouTube channel, so anything that you missed, you'll be able to see it later. I'll send out a link. So anyway, just to continue with where we were, what we were saying is that Cavin has a setup, and I just found this out myself. He just came in, and I just discovered this. It's awesome. Has a setup where he's professional games master. He has got clients. He runs games for them, and they pay him. And we were just talking about the financing aspect of, is this a livable thing to do? And the answer is, if you have a very low overhead in your life, then yeah, you might be able to actually make this livable. And Cavin has made it livable, but it's not a get-rich-quick scheme by any stretch of the imagination. I will imagine that it's probably a CFP. I would imagine it's a slow build, but as you become more popular, you get more clients. And my feeling is, once you get demand coming in, then at that point, and you know what? This is a new thing. Nobody's heard of professional games mastering. Oh, I also want to plug, I'm running a professional games mastering society. I've just invited Cavin to join us. I didn't know he was there. And our purpose is to, basically brainstorm on ideas for professional games mastering. We have a lot of documentation, a lot of brainstorming, We've got setups where, one thought that we had was, let's go to community centers. And I've done this before, so I know this actually does work. Go to community centers, say, hey, I want to run a game program, an educational role-playing game program for kids, and they may pick up on that and say, okay, that sounds cool. They might pay, like, let's say $50 an hour for you to do that. I've also run a different type of setup where some parents came to me and they said, we want you to run a game for our kids. And I said, okay, I'm going to charge X dollars an hour per player. And that was my, kind of financial setup. And I made, I was running a game once a week on Saturdays for the parents. And these were like 11 and 12-year-old kids, and I had 12 of them. So, yeah, it was...
12-player game, that must have been kind of...
It was a lot of fun, though. I have to say, I never met a more creative crowd than these kids. And they, immersion was not an issue with these kids. They absolutely were so there. It was so great. It was a lot of fun, but it was a huge amount of work. And I was also, at the same time, using this as a test bed for an application that I was developing to help me do the games mastering for this. And so my time was like half spent prepping for the games and getting everything together, blah, 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 and half spent programming and fixing stuff and whatever. So I was super, super busy. But in 12 weeks, I made $1,360. Not a huge amount of money, but for a once-a-week game, and just a proof of concept that, hey, professional games mastering, it's something that can be done. It worked really well, and I took a lot of notes on how I set it up, and my thinking was at some point, hey, why don't I take this concept, package it up, and I wound up creating the Professional Games Master Society, where I was introducing these ideas, got a lot of brainstorming back. People have been super about, and there are other people out there who are doing things like role-playing game camp, which I had never heard of, but it exists. It's out there, and a variety of other things that people are doing. So it actually, I think the concept of professional games mastering is something that we should be focusing on. We should be orienting towards, and my reasoning is it's a lot of work to be a good games master. And you know what? There are other creative arts out there where people make money doing the creative arts. And sure, there are people who do it just as a hobby. That's okay. That's cool. Fine. You want to be a musician and it's just a hobby? Fine. That's awesome. There's still a million musicians doing it as a hobby. But some people can make money at it because they up their level and they get to the point and they're like, okay, no, I'm really intent on making a living out of this. And why would I want to do that? Well, so I can up my game, because look, as a games master, it's so time consuming to do good games mastering. If I don't have that time to do it, then I can't really put the full effort into it. And if I can't put the full effort into it, then I can't really level my game and make it as good as it can possibly be. So that was my thinking.
The very first thing that I've seen in this vein that's been really successful is Critical Role on Twitch. And I know a lot of people are seeing that now. I saw last week they had over 22,000 viewers. And so that's starting to get, at least within the community, very mainstream. Now that's still a performance by professionals. I mean, they're all actors.
Yeah.
And so that's something that people want to see. So I think, there's that part of the conversation. You can put on kind of like almost like a play.
Right.
Where you don't know exactly what's going to happen.
Yep.
And that's what's really kind of cool about it. But then, where can most people do it? We've been in an industry that's been very product-centric for a long time. It's about, do I have a game system? Like, do I own it? Is it mine? So I can, do whatever around it. And then, like creating stories and that kind of things, for people to buy, whether it's a source book or an adventure or whatever. I really feel like this industry would be 20 times bigger than it is if they would focus on service. If they wouldn't focus so much on having a system that was theirs, that they focused on creating their own personal system as either a standalone, like a small business standalone DM, or a group of people that maybe work together and get each other, what do you call it, like clients and stuff, and maybe they go back and forth and everything. I really feel like that is the key to making this go as big as some of these other things. And the online, I would say, platform is better for this than the in-person platform, just because then you can get more people together in the market. Like you've got all these people that are kind of isolated in their own little small towns, and maybe they would like to do something like this, but instead of being limited to the people in their backyard, they're not limited at all. I mean, like, I've played with people that are from Japan, from Israel, from Germany, from let's see, I think those are the three main places where I've done some of my partially open games where people could sign up and get a spot. So yeah, right now is the time, like with Fantasy Grounds launching and being successful, getting the licenses for the products, and you being able to take that and go forward and do your own little, small business marketing and that kind of stuff. That's really where it is for individuals. And really, I mean, it's Wizards of the Coast and, other companies and stuff. These things don't make them very much money compared to some of the other things they do. Like Magic the Gathering is like printing money. It really is. Like if you've ever looked at the financials from it,
Sure.
it just is, because it has to do with gambling problem, or like with the gambling kind of thing. What am I going to get? And they show you ways to get value out of that kind of behavior, but that's what it is. Anything that kind of revolves around that Skinner box kind of concept is going to make more money than something that's purely creative. And so, anyway, I mean, I'm going in a bunch of different directions, but basically, service is the way to go. Don't focus on products.
Hey, can y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can. There you are. How you doing, John?
I'm doing all right. I didn't really cut you off. I just wanted to make sure that my mic was working out.
Oh, no, I was just done. I mean, I knew that I was starting to ramble, so I just had to cut myself off.
No problem. So, and Rob, you're still on mute. I'm sorry. I have tried a number of times to unmute you. I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but maybe you're muted on your own side.
Yeah, it looks like mute is grayed out, so he might actually have like an issue with his microphone.
Okay. Anyway, hopefully you can hear us and everything's cool. So I think, John, you know that the topic we're discussing is this idea of professional games mastering, but I do want to, just for your sake, and I mentioned this earlier, kind of tie this in with the Literary Role-Playing Game Society concept. So I see these two groups as being mutually supportive. So there's the Professional Games Master Society, and in the link you'll find, oh, okay, great. Okay. Yeah, if you just want to check that, Rob, say something to us. We're listening.
Test, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, very good. We heard you loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Woohoo, I'm here.
Okay. So anyway, the idea here is that I have these two groups, Professional Games Master Society and the Literary Role-Playing Game Society. I see them as mutually supportive. Literary Role-Playing Game Society would be focused on techniques for games masters to make their worlds more story-esque. And I definitely want to say up front about this that as far as I'm concerned, it's a completely system-neutral concept. I do it with a very traditional old-school style game. And all I'm looking at are techniques for games mastering to develop stories that have character development, that have story arcs, themes maybe, and things like that. And that's what I do with it. Although I completely understand that, one, there's story games out there, and people may be confused if I say, hey, I'm talking about story-centric gaming. They may think I mean story games, and that's not really the case. I just mean any role-playing game where you wind up looking at the story at the end and you say, yeah, that was a pretty cool story. Okay, to me, and that's system neutral as far as I'm concerned. So I'm looking at techniques for helping games masters to kind of up their game and this kind of ties in with the professional role-playing game society, because I think professional games masters will need those skills in order to really, hey, why is the public going to come to you as a professional games master rather than, the guy down the street who's not a professional games master? Well, he might be running just a dungeon crawl, and he's constantly looking up rules in the book, and there's no story involved. And yet, here's Cavin, and he's got an awesome, ongoing, let's say, epic adventure that when you watch it, let's say he's streaming it or whatever, you participate in the game, it is like, okay, I love these characters. This is an excellent story. It's real science fiction or it's real fantasy. And those kind of things come into play when you want to up your level in order to be professional at it, professional quality.
Right. So, and I would say that I want to get onto your literary topic because I know that that's what's scheduled to be talked about. So, I would say that it's kind of easy for me just in what I've been doing because I have a story to follow. Because I'm doing Dungeons and Dragons Adventures League, so I'm using either the modules that they have. Or I'm using a book, and so my more open game that I talked about is using one of the campaign books. So it's a little bit more open, it's a little bit more freeform, because that's going to be a game that's going on for a long time with kind of the same people. Almost always, it's about the same group of people. And the other stuff is it's actually very goal oriented. It's like, you have a story, somebody gives you something to do, you get some information on how to do that thing, you go, you travel a little bit, you do that thing, and then the session's over. So the way that literarily, I don't know if that's a word or not.
Well, literally, it's literary, I think.
Yeah, so in a literary sense, how about that?
Yeah.
It's successful because it's actually very concise and limited. I think a lot of people and a lot of systems get caught up in how complex the system can be and get caught up in the creating the characters or other things that you have to create to make those things go forward. And they get so caught up in that they never actually come out the other end with the finished product that they can put on the table and then play, and then have the time, and everybody makes the time to actually make those sessions happen. And I don't. Well, I have more stuff to talk. I could talk about the professional part, but the literary part. I really think that those products and this thing that I'm doing is successful because it puts parameters around what you're doing.
Right.
And if you tighten it up because you know you only have so much time with a group of people, I think it's been really successful. And I know that probably Pathfinder Society has things that are similar, these big organized play things, and we're talking about two of the biggest RPGs in the room. I feel like that's why they have a lot of players, is because it's like your creativity is a little bit more limited, but because of that, stuff actually happens. And I think that's one of the reasons that, old video games, just to use a video game reference, the technology was so limited that they had to be very creative in a very small space. And that's why they were able to produce, kind of almost on schedule. Because then you can say, well, we can only do it in here. The biggest challenge I see for a lot of game storytellers, game masters, however you want to call them, is just kind of creating your little box, creating the swaths that you want to explore and that your group wants to explore, and then stay in there. Because really you could do anything, but stay where it makes sense, stay what's going to drive the story instead of just going off into left field.
Right. Yeah. But I think that is also possible to do in a game that is like a sandbox game. What I do for my game is I have my own world. It's not based on any, modules or set system. It's just
Right.
It's my world, and I've been running it for a long time, so I know what's going on, in various areas in my world.
Sure.
So I can kind of run it like a sandbox in the sense that they can go in any direction, and I know there's something over there. I may not know a lot of details about
Right.
what's going on over there, but I do a sort of serendipity style of games mastering where I have about, I'd say, on any given game, maybe 50% or 60%, but not 75% of the details fleshed out. And so there's enough buffer room for improvisation during the game, but enough structure for me to have a basic understanding of who's who and why are they doing what they're doing and what are they trying to accomplish, so that when the improvisational aspects come up, I at least know what's going on well enough to be able to improv it in a natural way without losing the story. And what I try to do is I try to keep track of any loose threads, because one of the big problems with this style is you wind up with clues that weren't followed or things that just went off tangent and disappeared into the distance, and they don't hear about it. And what I do is, over the course of a campaign, which might be a year or 2 years, and let's say I run a game every other week, so let's say 24 or 36 games a year, something in that between that range. What I try to do is I keep track of the loose threads, and then as the game progresses, that character who disappeared with the talisman and stole it and ran off gets mentioned again a couple of games later. Like there's a rumor about where she disappeared to, and then maybe a year later it turns out that, wow, that was actually a critical relic and we need to go find that girl. And so the loose ends, I try to tie the loose ends together before the final story arc ends. So I have these sort of conceptual story arcs, and I try to tie up the loose ends over the course of the story arc, especially 3/4 of the way through or 2/3 of the way through. I start tying up the loose ends and bringing them together. And so by the end, if you read the story as prose, it would read like an actual fantasy novel, because the characters are developing, their viewpoints are changing, they're becoming more, let's say, heroic or capable or whatever. And they're getting involved in social relationships that are evolving. And the plot line is not, I don't start out and say, this is the end, this is what's going to happen at the end of the story. I don't do that. What I do is I have a number of possible things where I look ahead and I say, well, if it goes this way, it could end like this, or it could end like that, but I don't want to enforce anything on the players. And usually about 3/4 of the way through, the various things that I thought might happen aren't the ones that look like they're going to happen, and I start focusing on other things, and new things have already come up, and I'm like, whoa, that could happen. And I just try to ride it, like, surfing. I try to surf my world and see what happens. So that's how I approach it, and that's worked for me, and it's been a lot of fun.
It's really funny with this kind of thing that you're talking about, the kind of interactions that you have to have with your left brain and right brain stuff, because you would think that if you were going to have a really successful story that you would know exactly how it's going to go, but that really in reality, especially when you're dealing with you're not dealing with a huge audience, you're dealing with a very captive audience, that it goes the way that people have the most fun with.
Right.
And that is going to be in different directions at different times, and maybe it ends up being kind of something that you thought of. But it's one of the coolest things about this. Even if you're the professional, even if you're the one that's kind of leading everything, that doesn't mean that you're the one that has to always provide the magic. But you are the one that provides kind of like the framework around the magic happening.
Yep.
And I've had a little bit of pushback with what I've been doing with people that are thinking that way. That are just like, well, I'm doing all these great things and stuff as a player or whatever. Why am I paying, or why would I pay, or why would I, do whatever to be in this game? And I'm just saying, well, would you have done that if you weren't here? If I didn't, if you didn't make a personal commitment to actually come here, because I see all kinds of cool campaigns and games and things, like on the G Plus role-playing community and a few different communities and stuff. They're great concepts. They never happen because there isn't enough structure around it, and people don't make them enough of a priority. So you just have to figure out a way to make people make them a priority, and there's a few things that work very well. Making somebody pay $20 is a way for them to make it a priority.
Right.
Or,
yeah. Well, the psychology of it is once I paid for something, it now has value.
yeah,
You know?
exactly. And it's like you can have things that are non-profit and totally, like have tons of value, but sometimes unless you put a dollar amount on it, it just goes to the bottom of the stack, and you'll always find something else to do. And
Yeah.
but yeah, we're on one end of the fence, but really it's kind of like there are a lot of games that that resources start out as a kind of a what would you call it? I don't want to call it a hook, but they start out as something that players are really looking for. And I find that in games that go kind of long, it ends up being less about those things and more about just the story, like the interaction, like what's happening with people, like people looking forward to the development of what's happening with them, at least in the really successful games that I've seen. Like at first you might be putting a magic sword out here for somebody to find, and that's like the kind of thing to get them to get to that point, to try and get them to develop to that point. But it's almost like going up the pyramid of what do you call it? It's kind of like a needs pyramid. You start out kind of towards the bottom, and I think in a literary sense, that's the way I'm going to say this.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
You start out with the basic stuff, the basic needs, and those are the important things. And then you roll it towards these less tangible things. And that will give you a story that's what gives you an environment that makes makes your players just thinking about the session they're going to have just as much as they'd be thinking about what's going to be in the next episode of Game of Thrones or something like that. So once you get to that point, you know that you really have something, like you have created some kind of construct that people really put some value in.
Well, you know that you're being successful when you hear from your players, wow, when I left that game, I spent the whole week thinking about what my character is going to do next.
Right.
Okay, this is definitely working. They're into it. And I think that one of the keys for me in terms of making it work is the science fiction, or that the fantasy of the world is in some sense, in some way, unique and intriguing. That the world itself has to present things to people that they haven't experienced before. And it could be an amalgam of things that they've experienced before, shown in a new way or from a new perspective.
Right.
But it has to have some elements that are, intriguing. You have to be intrigued by somebody's world, in my opinion. I mean, at least for me, that's how it works. So I'm kind of assuming it works this way for others. But like the games masters who I adored the most had worlds that just intrigued me because they had depth to it, and it was like I'm just amazed. Okay, sure, John.
That's okay, John.
Yeah, good to see you, and catch you next time. And I'm gonna send out a link to the video so you can catch it later. So anyway, so to me that's really one of the things that kind of brings the whole thing to light is how excellent is this world concept,
Right.
And so that's
Well, and I feel like too that you have different layers of kind of audiences. Like you have people that are, maybe like aren't really looking to be intrigued with the world, but they are looking to be entertained and to see something cool and different. And I think those two things, the only thing that separates them is just how much energy that they would take to actually, like, you know, learn more about that setting. You know, because if some people are really at the intrigue level, they're gonna read source books. They read stories in that world. You know, they're really like, that's gonna be like a core. That would be like a core customer if you were building like an intellectual property around that. And then the people below that are people that, you know, want to be entertained and this is cool, but they don't have to know everything about it.
Right.
A lot of it is like, what I think is funny. I mean, there are a lot of different styles out there. There are some people that want to know every detail about everything. And they want to remember every detail about everything. And what I've actually been working on, and I guess this is, I don't know if this is literary, but it definitely is kind of like psychology. You know, I've kind of identified some hierarchy or like archetypes of players. And there are some archetypes that have been developed around kind of like how players want to affect things. Like, do they like to affect the environment? Do they like to affect other people? Do they like to explore? Do they like to oh shoot, I'm trying to remember. There's one more, but it's basically there's 4 archetypes there. Well, I've identified 4 archetypes too, like when I've been running games, and I'm trying to remember them all because I have them written down, and it's just something that I haven't worked on for a long time. But one of them is the people that really enjoy the mechanics, like the rules. They know the rules. They know every little thing about every interaction. They like to read erratas and read, you know, like keep up on all the rulings and that kind of stuff.
Right.
What I do is if I have one of those people, it actually takes some of the burden off of me and allows things to go a little bit faster. If they are now the mechanics expert at the table, that's something I can delegate. So if I have something in my mind that I don't really remember exactly, I can ask that person, "How is this? Do you know how this works? How does this work?" And what I do with that, even if it's not a perfect it's a perfect rendition of the rules, it's something that everybody around the table can feel good about. As in, like, you know, well, one of us is saying, well, this is how it has to be, and we're trying to work together doing these things. So, you know, if everybody's on the up and up, it's even better than if I make a ruling and, you know, I always know the rules. So that's like one archetype of person. There's another archetype of person that they're really there for the social interaction for the people. They really don't care about the game system that much. I mean, they're there, maybe they like it and that's cool, but really they're more there to socialize.
Right.
So with those people, those are the people that usually also really like to get into interacting with NPCs and things. So what you do is you just kind of set them in the forefront of some of those kind of things, and they will be emotionally invested in playing a good role that way. And they're usually the people that, like, you know, they talk as their character and that kind of stuff. And so you could get a lot of mileage out of that, and you can get a lot of role-playing mileage out of the people around you, around them that don't do that much. So that's part of it. There's also you've got somebody that is kind of more instead of like the guy that likes to know all the rules, he's the guy that likes to, or girl that likes to do, really likes the combat part, like the non-interaction, like the what do I want to call it? The non-role-playing interaction with the world.
Right.
So these are usually the people that like to play rogues, you know, people that like to look for traps, they like puzzles, they like, they like the strategy of the tactics of playing some of the different games. And for them, you can use that to where you present them with challenges that it's really going to take them helping the rest of the party to do something that is an advanced tactic to get over. And I think what is it? Those are the 3 strongest. I'm trying to think if there's any, but there's the lore buff. So this is a little bit different than the guy that knows all the rules. He knows all of the non-mechanical stuff about the world, about who, where, when. Like this is, and of course this isn't like a published world where you can read these things. Those are the people that you actually get mileage out of away from the table, because you talk to them outside of the session when you're looking to plan things, and they can give you information that they're like an encyclopedia of
Right.
who's where, who's doing what makes sense in the world, what would bring, what would make them really feel like, man, this is really happening in the world that I know. So those are different than the concepts that I've heard from, like those other 4 concepts I talked about. That was more for like for EverQuest and the MMOs and that kind of thing, to get different kinds of players involved with their world. These are the ones that I've kind of identified. And if you can be a good leader of this construct of bringing people to the table, and you can identify these traits in people, and people can be a mixture of the traits, but those are the most what do you call it, the most stereotypical of the archetypes. That, and you kind of like mix those things together. I mean, it's a lot to keep track of. Being a storyteller is not easy, and you're always dealing with all these dynamics.
Yeah.
But those are the things that I've identified, and I don't know if that's like literary, but it's like what is going to make a good experience for people at the table. That's what I've kind of found.
Right. Now, where I think all of this is going in the long run is in the direction of entertainment for let's say, a broader audience. So, and I think
it's water. I'm listening.
Okay, sure, no problem. But the idea that I have is that broader audiences who are going to find this entertaining, maybe in the sense of watching a story, let's say like a soap opera that is ongoing with characters that they know, and it's evolving. And the difference between this and a soap opera is that nobody knows what is really going to happen, and everything is really kind of contingent on chance, and people know that. So you're rolling dice, and the dice are deciding whether or not so-and-so is successful, and what the party is really trying to do is maximize their chances of success by making smart choices. So from a tactical perspective, that means, understanding the opponent and, recon and things like that. From a social perspective, it means having good intuition with understanding how people, behave. And, you're dealing with the king of the frog people, and you really kind of just have a sense of, they're, going to behave this way, and the king is going to, whatever. So the point is that when the audience is looking at this, I think what is going to be intriguing to a broader audience. So let's say that you and I were playing, and we were streaming this, and this is going up, and instead of it being like putting a camera on a D&D game, it was more like putting a camera on a theater event that had dice involved with the decisions.
Right.
So it's more theatrical, and the phrase that I coined to describe it is improvisational game theater. And the concept is that it's a game, and it's theater, and it's really theater more than a game. Because what I'm really interested in is in the interaction of the characters with each other, the non-player characters, and the world. And the dice aspect and the combat aspect are kind of sublimated and a little bit secondary, but still there and still critical to success in the game, but it's still secondary. And the reason why is because I think in the long run, the real money is in large audiences who are intrigued by what you're doing. You're performing, and you're doing performance art. And if it's art, and it's good art, and it's interesting, and it's by chance, and everybody's on the edge of their seat wanting to know, is this guy going to pull this off, or is he going to get himself killed? What's going to happen? I think that can create the kind of atmosphere that could draw in large audiences, and that is where money is.
Yeah, and that's where Critical Role is right now.
Right.
I mean, and they're doing exactly what you're talking about. They have a storyteller that's talented enough and good enough of a writer and a performer to make that kind of world come alive on his side. And then he has very strong characters. You know, people have come to really, I don't want to say identify, but like identify with, but identify the characters. So like, you know who Scanlan is, you know who, I'm trying to think of a few of their names. You know who, oh gosh, I can't. I've watched it a few times, but I don't remember all their names. But anyway, like people really know those characters and know their personalities and have a good idea. You know, they have a decent intuition about what's going to happen. But they also know that, you know, they're in combat. There's crazy things that can happen. They've gone up against different, you know, like been in very dire situations, and you know, at this point, they've still kind of come out mostly unscathed, but I think they have a few characters that have left, and I don't know if anybody's actually died in the game, but it's definitely something. If you have a background in the film and theater industry, that bringing this into it kind of like, it's a different experience. I'm not going to say that it's a better experience, but it's a experience for people that really are looking for much more, like much less consistent product. Like over here, you've got like Game of Thrones, and you've got, you know, just movies in the theater and that kind of stuff. A lot of the people that I talk to are not satisfied with that kind of media because maybe it looks fancy, maybe, you know, it's that kind of stuff, but it's so... It has to cut so many corners just because of the audience that they're going for. And so, so really you've got this over here, you've got people that, you know, they want to have that less, what do you call it? Less predictable. There you go. Kind of entertainment. But that comes with risk. I mean, like, you could be telling a great story, and then something happens, and then you make a roll, and it's just, like, very anticlimactic, and it's like... but for the people that really are into that, that's okay. It's not going to make them not watch.
Right.
It's just that, you know, you could build something up, and then it doesn't work. That's the reality. That's, like, life, you know?
Right.
And over here, it's even more. It kind of is more fantasy than the role playing, you know, because this is just, you know, you can write down exactly how you want it to happen. And if you want it to be predictable, so that you know, the majority of your audience is like, well, I knew that was going to happen. Look how smart I am, you know. Right. It's very separate. So,
it's a real challenge, I think. If I try to consider what it would actually take as a games master to run the concept that I have in mind, which, you know, I definitely am gearing myself towards and trying to set up, you know, an environment in which I can do it. But the challenge to the games master in this case is you have to be cognizant of the audience and the players. And they're two separate entities with different needs. And so balancing that out is going to be one of the real challenges of the game. Like, for example, you have some games masters, and for whatever reason, they can't kill a character. You know, like they feel like if I kill a character, something has gone totally wrong, and the world is going to hate me. My friends are going to hate me. Everybody's going to hate me, and it can't happen. I just can't do it. And so somehow or other, it turns out that game after game after game after game after game, everybody's alive. Right. But what the problem with it is that over time it diminishes tension in the game, because people realize, well, this must be a low or no risk environment in which you know, everybody's operating, because I mean, how many times can the guy throw himself into the maw of the dragon, you know, while the breath, and somehow he winds up alive every time, you know? So that's part of it. And then the other side is, what is a general audience, people who might be like buying tickets, let's say, to the event, or let's say they have a season pass, and they're really, for them it's like watching, an adventure soap opera.
Right.
And yeah, occasionally they really want somebody to die because it's exciting.
Right.
But your players don't want to die, and then how do you
Right.
handle it? Now they're dead, so now what happens? And, so one of the thoughts I have is, well, if you die, then the new guy comes in, and there's a new player and a new character, because you got to think in terms of it's a show.
Right.
So it's like, oh, what happens in a soap opera when somebody dies? Well, a new character comes in. That's what happens.
Right.
And maybe
absolutely.
maybe they come back later somehow.
Yeah, I think what it takes is just a more seasoned player, honestly, like somebody that understands you're not going to just take somebody off the street and put them in a situation like this. Wouldn't be fair. I mean, to either of you, because they don't know how to operate under those kind of circumstances.
Sure.
I mean, there are some systems that I've played where you make multiple characters a session because there was so much craziness going on.
Right.
But it's kind of like you create a construct where people understand that that's what can happen, and have a contingency that they know of. Like, as in, if this happens, then you're going to do this. You're going to create another persona, but you're still, but you're going to have these resources to work with and that kind of stuff. Like, I think if people knew, well, if I do die, then I can. It's not like I don't lose anything, because I lose a lot of character development, and I lose a lot of stuff that I've already built up that's non-tangible with this character, but that I can come back into the game and not be like handicapped because I'm gonna have to build new relationships, I'm gonna have to do that. But like when it comes to mechanically, that they're able to step in and serve and be cool, and be a functioning part of that party. Even right
well,
when they start.
Even if they weren't, though, I mean, I could see running it like in the sense of sort of. My mind goes to: is it realistic? Can I bridge the barrier between over the wall of disbelief? Can I get through that barrier? Right. And one of the ways to get through that barrier is that the world feels real. It has this real feeling to it. It isn't pre-structured to, the party went around the corner in the dungeon and there was the opposing party. And guess what? It was a matchup between, the hero team and the villain team. And, wow, it was Colossus versus, this guy and that. Oh, and the powers all match. And, oh, gosh. And, it isn't like that. No, it was by chance. They made a bad decision. They went into, the dungeon, and it turned out that, no, it's really filled with lizard men. And they actually are really tough. And they barely managed to get out alive and lost, several members and then hightail it back to their, home base or whatever.
Sure.
So, and then, let's say somebody dies and a new character comes in and it's a new player, and the player's starting at a random level, let's say, between 1 and 5, so that the world itself feels like. And how do you incorporate? Oh, well, I'm the new player, I'm the new kid on the block, and the party is souped up, but I'm not. But and as games master, you've got to provide a means for this person to be viable in the story.
That's just really advanced. Like you're just talking about really advanced concepts when it comes to you as the storyteller and them as the players. I mean, they would have to be somebody that has the experience to be able to not. Well, I mean, I don't know. They're going to be vulnerable, in that situation. So they're going to have to figure it out. But I'm sure that there are plenty of characters that you've seen in shows and any kind of media where they're not exactly the most capable.
Right.
But that's something, they have opportunities to shine, even if it's not, rolling dice against somebody else. They they end up doing something, some weird odd job or something for the group, and they're able to kind of use that and play with that and everything. So yeah, I mean, it's just really just advanced concepts again. It just takes a lot of experience. Like, I mean, I've been doing this since I was like 15 years old, so I've been doing it for half my life. There are lots of people out there like me that have been doing this for 15, 20, 25 years. And right now, I think that this is the time where the art is old enough to where there's enough people that have spent enough time doing this that things that we're talking about can actually happen.
I agree.
Because I feel like in the early TSR days and that kind of stuff, when D&D was barely anything above a war game, there really just isn't enough maturity in the audience, in either the audience or the producers, to explore this kind of thing that can be like on a huge scale successful.
Right.
I mean, like with anything, like with esports, like, because I deal with a lot of up and coming things. I deal with esports, I deal with streaming, I deal with this. I feel like, by the time that I'm, 80 years old, that these things are going to be large, fruitful entertainment industries.
I agree.
Replacing some of the older industries because of, really just because of costs. I mean, like, it costs a lot of money to run a stadium. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you don't need a stadium, but you can still have the same number of people. And oh, by the way, they're even more comfortable than they would have been if they were in the stadium. They're in their living rooms, their big TVs, and their big, like entertainment little, stations, and they're happy as they can be. They got exactly what they want to eat. They're exactly comfortable with what they're doing, and it's something that you couldn't even provide as somebody trying to provide something for a wide audience, in a physical space.
Right.
So, and I guess my whole thing there is just the time is coming. And we just have to bring the ideas together and be able to have the patience to see them actually go to fruition and not rush things together. I mean, I'm sure the Geek and Sundry guys had that concept and that they worked on it for a good while before, because I mean, Matt Mercer's had that game for years. Like they've been doing it, and they've just been doing it as a group of people that that were physically in the same location for years. So it's not something that they just threw together and we're like, okay, well, we're going to go from here. They've got, Matt's got half a lifetime of things to draw from in his own, version of what he's doing. So, yeah, it's just identifying that, getting it together with the people that have some means. And where does it start, though? It starts with the people that have the means already, So like, there are a lot of people out there that would do it if somebody would hand them $50,000,
Right.
But it's not going to be done first by the people that need $50,000 handed to them. It's going to be done by people that are, that can, you scrounge together a few grand and you can make it happen. And then after that, that sets precedent. So it's just like, that's just how entrepreneurship works. Somebody has to show that it's been done. Like, I can tell you, it can be done. Now,
how far can we take it is the question.
Yeah.
And I just want to, actually, it's 8 o'clock, so we've been an hour. So I sort of want to wrap up because I don't want this to go too long, because I know people kind of bounce off if it's too long. But so I kind of want to wrap up, and I want to say a couple of things about what you just said. One is that, I think that it starts with people doing small entrepreneurial games mastering events professionally. That's where this all starts. And as we up our game, as we up our skill level at games mastering, and as we interact with each other as professional games masters and contemplate different ideas and look at different focuses of, well, where can we be successful with this? We're going to innovate in a lot of different directions over time. So I think you're absolutely right. by the time we're 80, and I think it's going to happen a long time before we're 80, this is going to be a huge venue of entertainment. And the reason why I think it's going to be huge is not so much because it's cheaper, although that's an excellent point and definitely will help to drive it. But I think the main thing is that it's participatory in nature.
Right.
And that's the compelling aspect of it, I think, is that people are not just going to the movies to watch somebody else's story.
Right.
They're coming
making
in,
their story.
they're making their own story. And even this idea that I have of improvisational game theater, one of the aspects of it is I want to draw the audience into the story. So
Right.
I want to have the audience segmented into different groups. And those different groups represent either forces in the world, and they vote. And they vote at key points during the game as to what is going to happen next.
Yeah.
And
That'd be cool.
that brings the audience into the story. And that is what is going to make this all the more compelling, and I think ultimately all the more successful as a kind of new art form and a new form of entertainment. So I always think of role-playing games as in its absolute infancy right now, and it is the art form of the 21st century. In my opinion, I think it's going to turn out that this is the art form of the 21st century because it is combining a whole set of other art forms into one activity that really has never been able to be done before.
Yeah.
Because we can, we now have the ability to pull all these things together. So it's storytelling, it's history, it's game mechanics, it's tactics, it's combat, it's all kinds of knowledge. It's improvisational theater. It incorporates chance, and good storytelling and character development, and all of these things together, and artwork. I mean, art is a huge component of role-playing games, and will continue to be, and so on. So, to me, I think that what it really is that we're at the nascent beginning of this evolutionary process of developing this art form of role-playing games. And so that's where I think it's going to wind up becoming a really big deal in the future. And a lot of people are going to say, wow, I want to participate in these stories. I don't want to just go to a movie and watch a movie.
I totally agree. And well, I hope we can have more of a conversation. I know you want to cut this off, but I would be interested in figuring out how I can do a little more with
Absolutely.
with
Well,
your
what I'd like to do is, I want to run this Literary Role-Playing Game Society meetup once a month. And then I also would like to start doing the same thing, but with the Professional Gamesmaster Society, and have a meetup for that group. And do the same thing. It'll also just be a knowledge sharing and brainstorming thing, very similar to this. And what I'll try to do is be a little more organized with that, maybe introduce certain specific topics on, how do we set up frameworks. And I still have at least a half dozen questions rolling around in my head for how you've got your situation set up. And, so maybe that would be a good topic for a hangout with the Professional Gamesmaster Society.
Yeah. And if you have some more time after this, I'd like to talk to you for a little bit at least. I'll have to take just a quick break, but so I just got to say thanks for hosting this. This is really awesome. I will say myself, I haven't taken upon myself to host a lot of things, but I see there are a lot of good things that are happening now, and they just need more people to get involved. So, the first follower is just as important as the leader, is what I've been, I've learned when it comes to, some of the business and idea creation kind of things. So, here I am. And,
all right. Well,
yeah,
great. And it's awesome to have you. I'm totally delighted that you showed up. This has been, and it's been really good to talk to you, get to know you, because you're doing the thing that, I think a lot of us are saying, I wish I was doing that thing. This guy is doing that thing. If he could do that thing, I could do that thing. Why don't I be doing that thing? And that's very encouraging for people. So I just want to say thank you for actually daring to get out there and do this thing, which is totally awesome.
Yeah.
So
this is my wrap up. You can do your final thing if you want, but I need to take like a quick 5-minute break. I will be more than happy to be involved, and I'm sure we'll have something really cool happen of it. So I'll be right back.
Okay, great. All right, so for anybody who has caught this, just to kind of wrap up, this is our first Literary Role-Playing Game Society Hangout. I hope to have more. I'd like to do this once a month. It's basically brainstorming on, how to make worlds more, have more literary qualities to them. So the topics will be things like, how do you do story arcs and how do you maintain story arcs? How do you do cat herding, for your campaigns? Let's see, how about character development? What about improvisational narration? And descriptive narratives, and how do you nuance that? These kind of topics are good fodder. I'm totally open to ideas that anybody may have as to additional topics. And then the other side of it is, so there's two sides of this coin. The Professional Gamesmaster Society is the other side of the coin, where we want to brainstorm and encourage the concept of professional games mastering, and figure out how do we bring this to fruition in order to allow games masters to professionalize, and therefore buy the time that they need in order to really make this go from hobby level to true entertainment level, which I think is the future. And so we're looking to brainstorm on that topic as well, and hopefully meet other people who can encourage us and help us to sort of get our bearings and figure out how are we going to do this thing. So anyway, thank you for joining. I do look forward to seeing you again, and I'm just going to sign off here and wish everybody well and good gaming to y'all.